Time for another edition of our Meet the Grain series. And this time we're talking all about oats. Hey everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, you know the drill. We talk all things real whole grains from a biblical perspective. So if you've been around for a little while, I have a Meet the Grain series where we go into depth with specific grains. This one's going to be a bit different because we are going to be talking about oats and we're going to be diving deep into that. But I'm also going to be showing you how I create different types of oats, what I use them for, the equipment needed, things like that. So if you've been wanting to know how to get oat groats into quick oats, all at home, or even rolled oats, we're going to be discussing that today and the equipment needed and what I use. As well as we're going to be discussing some fun facts about oats, the history, the nutrition value, especially compared to wheat. And we're going to be talking about how to store oats, because this is different than wheat berries, and what to look for when you are buying oats, especially for storage. So let's dive in and start with just kind of a brief history of oats. Oats have an interesting history that I find kind of comical, actually. Oats was not really seen as a grain for humans for quite a long time. And in fact, the Romans and the Greeks saw oats as kind of a weed. It was a nuisance. It was generally fed to the livestock, and they did not see it as fit for human consumption. But what makes this historical reference comical is that the Scots, Irish, those who were in more what we know today as the United Kingdom, and in the Germanic tribes during Roman times, they actually consumed oats because oats grow best in cool, wet climates. Especially during the summer, they have to be cool and wet. So the farther north you go, the better that they grow, which is why especially Scots, Irish are best known for consuming oats. But while the Romans looked down on the Germanic barbarians and those Scots, Irish who consumed oats, let us remember that the Roman Empire never fully succeeded into going all the way north, and it was Germanic barbarians that actually defeated the Roman Empire in AD 476. Thank you, Classical Conversations, Cycle 1, for that reference. It was also quoted by an author in the 1700s how in England, oats were generally fed to horses, while in Scotland, humans generally consumed oats, and the Scots would say, yes, that the English have good horses and the Scots have fine men. So kind of a fun little rivalry there, I guess, between the different grains. And it is thanks to these, especially the Scottish immigrants coming over to America. They brought their oats with them along with the Irish and the German. Thanks to those immigrants bringing oats over to the United States, we now have the very famous Quaker Oat Company that definitely made oats way more popular in the United States. They also really became popular in the 1980s thanks to the FDA in the United States slapping on a label saying that oats were great for lowering cholesterol. So there was a bit of a oat craze during that time. So even though oats, people were a bit more familiar with oats as far as consuming, especially for breakfast food, only 5% of today's oats grown are consumed by humans. The other 95% is still mainly used for livestock, but it's also in many other things like cosmetics, body washes. If you've seen those, you know, they say that oats is good for the skin, which it is. It still hasn't fully caught on. Wheat is definitely the dominant grain, at least in the United States. But fun fact about oats there. Now let's get into the difference between all the different type of oats that you see, because it can be confusing, especially because oats is a grain that you do find on the supermarket shelf. So what you have is you have oat groats, steel cut oats, rolled oats, or old-fashioned oats. You might have seen them. You also have your quick oats, and then of course your instant oatmeal and your oat flour. So what's the difference between all these? Basically, your oat groats is the entire oat. They look very similar to wheat berries, as you can see here. So definitely label them whenever you get them. Oat groats are also dehulled. And this is what you start with. This is what you're getting off the plant, and they are hulled just like wheat berries. And then we go from there. Then you take the Oat Groats, and they are then just cut up with steel blades, and that's where you get steel cut oats. It's just oat groats that have been finely cut with steel blades. Then you have your rolled oats or old-fashioned oats, which is where they're taking the oat groats and they're rolling them to make them flat, and thus it helps them to cook faster. And then from your rolled oats, you then take your rolled oats and you cut those up even more. That's where you get your quick oats that cook even faster than old-fashioned oats. And then of course you have your instant oatmeal, which just stay away from. I'll go ahead and say, just don't bother with instant oatmeal, because what that is it's basically quick oats that have been cooked already, and then, dried out, all the things added to it, flavorings, preservatives, all that stuff. And then all you have to do is then, you dump it in a bowl and add hot water. And then thanks to a lot of the gluten-free type movement, you do have oat flour, which all that is you just take your oat groats and you mill them into flour. Or, you are able to take, say, quick oats or old-fashioned oats and maybe throw them into a blender and blend them up really, really, really fine to make the flour. But I definitely recommend sticking with just get oat groats and mill them in your grain mill like you do flour to make oat flour. Okay, so let's talk about the nutrition value of oats, because even though it is a cereal grain like wheat berries, they do differ a little bit in nutrition. Oats do contain insoluble fiber, which is very important. It helps fill you up. It helps slow down, the digestion a little bit so it's not spiking any glucose levels. And the biggest thing with oats is thanks to the very high beta glucan, they help your glucose levels and they do help lower cholesterol. Now, wheat berries also do that as well, but oats are just a little bit higher in certain things, like they are significantly higher in manganese, but they're also a great source in selenium and other minerals. And basically what I recommend is consume both oats and wheat berries, milling your own grains to get to make bread and things like that, because they are really good pairing together, where one might be a little less, the other might be extremely high in the nutritional content. But it is definitely true when they say oats help lower your cholesterol. That definitely is true. But of course, you know me, y'all, do it the right way, and that's leaving your oat groats whole and intact, and then process them all yourself based on how you want to eat them. Which gets us into the actual use of oats, how to use them, especially when buying oat groats. So let's get into what to look for when buying oat groats, or oats in general, how to store them, and then finally how to process them to cook them the way that you're wanting to consume them. So first of all, this is important, what to look for when buying oats. Yes, you can buy old-fashioned oats and quick oats from the store, but remember, like wheat berries, once the grain has been open, it does start oxidizing. And so you're going to lose certain nutrients due to oxidizing. And a lot of times they have to add some extra stuff to make it last on the shelf. So just like with your wheat flour, it is definitely best to go ahead and buy yourself oat groats and then go from there. Now here's one of the reasons why oats have not been as popular of a grain, because they do not store as long as wheat berries. You know what I say about wheat berries? They can store for a super incredibly long time, as long as it is stored correctly, and I have videos all about that. But the thing is with oat groats, unlike wheat berries, is the oil is actually more on the outside of the oat groats compared to wheat berries, where that germ is safely on the inside of the wheat berry. That means oats are gonna go rancid faster. So here's what you need to do, and you may have seen this in a previous video with Pleasant Hill Grain Haul, where I purchased some oat groats from them, and they specifically state that they are toasted or stabilized Oat Groats. And that's what you need to look for if you're looking especially to store up Oat Groats longer term. So you're going to need to read the description when you're buying Oat Groats to see if they have stabilized the Oat Groats. And usually what that means is they are lightly toasted to stabilize that oil so they do not go rancid super quick. And I do know that Pleasant Hill Grain, they definitely state that they do that. And on top of that, when you purchase Oat Groats from Pleasant Hill Grain, they are coming in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers in a sealed bucket. And they state that their Oat Groats will be good stored up to 18 months. I think possibly longer, but I haven't tested that myself. But Oat Groats, bottom line, is not what you're wanting to store up for, say, 30 years down the road if you're looking to store up grains. Stick with your wheat berries for that. Oat Groats is, you can definitely have it longer term, but not like years long term. You also want to make sure that you are buying de-hulled Oat Groats, which means the hull has been removed, which most of the time, if you're just buying Oat Groats, they are probably going to be de-hulled, but watch out for that just to make sure. Otherwise, you're going to have to take off the hull yourself. Not fun, or just feed them to your animals. I do know from experience that Oat Groats certainly can go rancid, or you would definitely have to watch how you package them for longer term storage. Personally, I bought a 5-pound bag. This was months ago from Azure Standard. So it came in one of their, just paper bags, and I did not put it in a jar. I actually just left it in the paper bag. Don't do that, because within a few months, I actually used those oats to cook with, and they tasted like the paper bag. They tasted like cardboard. So do be sure you're careful with storing your Oat Groats. Have them be in a glass container or a food grade safe bucket, because again, they have that oil on the outside and they're going to kind of absorb your container, especially the longer it goes. So learn from my mistakes. Last but not least, let's talk about how to use Oat Groats at home and the equipment needed to do all the things. But before we do that, let's talk about today's sponsor, which is Pleasant Hill Grain. I've mentioned them before. Pleasant Hill Grain is wonderful because not only do they sell the Oat Groats in really good condition, they are very clean. They have stabilized them for longer term storage. It comes ready for longer term storage. But they also have many different types of oat flakers, which we will talk about in a bit, and equipment needed to use your Oat Groats, including, of course, grain mills. If you're looking at flour, or you need a grain mill for your wheat berries, all those things. I do love shopping with Pleasant Hill Grain. They are a pleasure to shop with. Their customer service is excellent, and I'm supporting a small company. So especially if you're wanting to look at flakers, mixers, grain mills, all of this wonderful equipment, and your Oat Groats, be sure to check out Pleasant Hill Grain. Just head on over to grainsandgrit.com/PHG. All right, so how to work with Oat Groats. Now, with Oat Groats, you can, like I said, from here, you can mill it into flour, or you can actually soak them overnight and just boil them up yourself the next day. It will take a little bit of time, but the soaking will make it less, and you can just consume them whole. Easy peasy, don't have to worry about fancy stuff. But let's go from there. Now, personally, I do not make my own steel cut oats. One, we're not a fan of steel cut oats. Two, you can do this, but you will need a very sharp blade to cut these up. It is much easier to just roll them into rolled oats and then make quick oats from there. And let me show you how I do that. So there's many different ways that you can do this. The first step that most people are wanting is a way to roll the Oat Groats into rolled oats. And what you need is something called a flaker. Now, there are manual flakers, and then there are electric flakers. And most of the electric flakers are attachments to equipment that you may already have. So there is, I actually have, it's right here. This is my flaker that attaches to my Bosch Universal Mixer. So one less piece of equipment that I need. They also have attachments for the KitchenAid and the NR mixer as well. And then of course you have your standalone manual ones that they offer, like the Como, Flaker. There are other brands as well. You can definitely check out Pleasant Hill Grain for that, where you're manually rolling them. Now I would only stick with a manual roller if you're not doing a lot. But if you're like me, well, we have a large family and I need to process a lot of things. The electric one has been a wonderful thing. So you just need a flaker to create rolled oats. And I'll show you how this works in just a minute. And then from there, I do like to make my own quick oats, which basically just means I'm chopping up the rolled oats. And there's different equipment that you can use to make that easier for you. With quick oats, that's what I like to use in my oatmeal cookies, which I do have a recipe for you guys. I'll link that below. And my family generally just likes the texture of quick oats a bit better. So let me show you how this flaker works. Okay, so it's actually pretty simple. And again, the Bosch Universal Mixer Plus comes with multiple attachments. This is just one of them. So all it requires is you take off your bowl, and then you flip your mixer upside down. You can see the controls are here. You mix it up here, and they actually have grips here for whenever you have to roll it on its side. This part stabilizes as well. And then you just take this and you connect it here. And then you have this part here, the little hopper, that just kind of slides right in. This is where you put the oat groats. And then you just need to provide your own little bowl underneath here. And then from here, very, very simple. So you just need to make sure everything's attached. And then you just turn it on and add your grains. All right, and there you have it. And in case you're wondering, I just put it on the 1 setting. You can do it higher. But there you go. That is half a cup of oat groats that has been rolled in about a minute, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And there you have your rolled oats. And from here, you can make oatmeal with rolled oats or use them for whatever you're wanting to use. Now let me show you how I take these and turn them into quick oats. Okay, so for quick oats, you can use multiple things. Bottom line is you need to get rolled oats first. And then you can take these and you can possibly just put them in a blender to get them smaller, because all we're doing is we're just making these smaller. You can also use a chopper like this. This is one of the Pampered Chef ones, to chop it on a cutting board. But what I found that was much easier and quicker was this little food processor type thing that came with my immersion blender. This is just an Oster immersion blender I've had for years. And it attaches this way. And so what I do is I just put a handful of oats in here. Again, this is half a cup, and this doesn't take long at all. That's why I love this thing. And then I just pulse. And I pulse to basically get the consistency that I'm looking for. Which, there you have it. And there are my quick oats, as you can see. And then compared to the ones from the store, not too shabby. So these will have a bit of the flour in it if you did it too much, and you know, it just doesn't take long at all. And there you have it. A very simple meet the grain, the nutrition facts, some fun little history about oats, and you know what to do when you have oat groats. Again, be sure to just head on over to Pleasant Hill Grain to check out all of their different flakers, pick you up some oat groats and different equipment as well. I think they do have even, you know, immersion blenders if you're needing that. But my biggest advice is, you know, consume both. Have a healthy diet of oats as well as wheat berries, and you're gonna be doing quite well. As always, hopefully this was helpful to y'all. Be sure to check out the recipe for my oatmeal cookies down in the description box below. And then of course, grainsandgrit.com/PHG to shop at Pleasant Hill Grain. As always, y'all have a wonderful day. I'll see you next week. Bye.